congrats yet again. It's the sixth time I've got to say that. So we talked a little bit about the writing of the film, and the genesis of the writing of the film, and particularly the source material of Miles' words, and where you have gone, and then where you finally ended up. So if you'd like to share with that.
Sure. I felt that when we started thinking about doing a film on Miles, that we could do this film without narration. And I kind of knew Quincy a little bit, and I saw him at a party, I think it was, and he said that he had tapes of Miles, these little cassette tapes, that's how they wrote the autobiography, by sitting there with these cassette tapes and just talking to Miles. And Miles and Quincy would just talk, and he had 40-something tapes. And we arranged with Quincy to get the tapes, and we got them, and we tried to use them for, 6 or 7 months. But the problem was that, those are old-style little cassette recorders, and I think they basically used the internal mic, so the sound wasn't great. And sometimes the TV would be on in the background, and sometimes, they'd order dinner or lunch, and they would start eating, and it was great as a research tool, but it was hard to use to fashion a narrative for a film because the sound was just not great. And so finally we gave up, and we said, there's the autobiography that Quincy wrote, and also some interviews that Miles had done in the last years of his life. And we'll get an actor. We've got great Carl Lumley to kind of voice Miles' his voice from the autobiography and a couple of other things. And that's how we ended up doing it. But we tried using those tapes for a long time, because that was really Miles' voice, and it would have been nice, but it was just too much of a compromise for the sound.
So Quincy, when did you first meet Miles, and how did the book come about?
How do you do this? Is it on?
Whoa. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and the first band he played in, you saw his band, Eddie Randall's band, was my cousin. And so he played in that band. And one day, I was just talking to him. He said, well, have you ever heard Miles Davis? And I said, no, I heard of him, but I don't know him because I was young, And so he said, okay, well, you'll probably get to know him. He played in my band. And I said, oh, really? And so one day we were sitting, I went to a fish place in St. Louis. And I went in there, and these 4 guys were sitting there eating, they were eating. And so they looked real hip because they had ascots, and in St. Louis that was weird. They had ascots and sunglasses. And this music was on the box, on the record player. So I went and sat behind him. I was about 15 years old, and I sat behind him. Thought I'd get to hear some hip stuff and all that. And they were talking about the brother from across the river, the homeboy from across the river, and they were talking about Miles Davis, and they had played this. They were playing this tune on the box. So they got up and left, and they said, well, and they turned to me and said, okay, did you learn something? And so I knew they I just kind of nodded about that. But I knew they played this certain tune. I think it was, I'm not sure what it was, Donna Lee. So I found it on the jukebox, and I went up and played it. And then I had about a quarter, and all it was nickels. You could play it for, nickels. And I went and played it again. And then I played it again. I played it 3 times. And that meant I'd never heard any music without somebody singing, really, that I really liked. So I really was into that. And I left and went home, and I started asking everybody about Miles. To make a long story short, he became the person that I really loved as a musician. I really loved him. And I loved the way he dressed. And for a young guy like me, I started dressing like him. I found out how he acted, and I started trying to act like him, from all the old guys. And they told me he did this. And I was acting like I hit on women, like I thought he hit on women. The whole 9 yards. And anyway, so when I got to New York, I thought I was, I became a journalist. I was writing and all that. And so I said, I want to meet Miles Davis. I want to meet Miles Davis. People say, "Pete, Miles Davis don't want to meet you." I said, "But you know, I'm a writer and all that. I'm kind of it." And so he said, "No, he just doesn't want to meet you. He don't want to meet people. He don't like to meet people." And I said, "Okay." So I finally got this chance to do this. My good friend Rudy Langlace was writing for the Village Voice, and I was writing for the Village Voice. I was writing all these pieces for the Village Voice. And then when he moved to Spin Magazine, he asked me what would I like to write. And I said, "I'd like to write a piece about Miles Davis." You know, and by this time I was living in Harlem on 116th Street. And he said, "Okay." And they put in a request, and the request came back, and it was me. I went down. He was living on 79th Street and Fifth Avenue.
What year was that?
This was 1985. 1985. I can tell you it was probably June, July. And I went down to his apartment on the 14th floor, 79th and Fifth Avenue, and I walked in. And by that time, I used to be a basketball player, so I had a bad knee, and I hadn't had a knee replacement at the time. So I go in, and he's standing, and he's painting. He's painting, and he makes me stand up. So I'm standing up 25 minutes, and I'm getting mad as hell. Now, what I forgot to tell you was that he had stiffed me a couple of times at parties. You know, he had he just wouldn't speak to me. Period. He shined me on and all that. So I had that in my whole head. And so when he was standing there, and I'm standing there, and he's painting, and he don't say nothing to me. You know, so I finally said, "Sit down. Sit down." So I go around the table, and I sit down, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me, and he reaches across, my dreadlocks are thick in there. He reaches across the table and grabs a handful of my hair and goes, "How you get your hair like that?" So I hit his hand. Bang! You know, he jumped back and he said, "Oh, you crazy motherfucker." I said, "No, I ain't crazy, man." I said, "Miles is space, Quincy's space. Miles is space, Quincy's space. Just because I'm here to do a interview with you, don't give you a fucking right to invade my space." So he looked at me and said, "Where you from?" I said, "St. Louis." He said, "I know you crazy motherfucker." So then I say, "Yeah, but the first band you played in was my cousin Eddie Randall's band." "Eddie Randall was your cousin?" I said, "Yeah, Eddie Randall was my cousin." He took the glass, with his dark glass off. He took the glass off, and he looked at me and he says, "Well, motherfucker, don't sit there ask me a fucking question." So I was supposed to be there an hour and a half, okay? And so I ended up being there 12 hours. He cooked for me. He did all kind of shit. And I had to call my wife and tell her, Margaret, I'm still here with him. I'm still here with Miles. You know, he's walking around here eating, he's cooking and all that. She says, "Can I speak to him?" So I said, "Miles, my wife wants to speak to you." So he said, "Okay." So I give him the phone, and she said, "Oh, hello, hi, Mr. Davis. Hi, Mr. Davis. I just love you, Miss." He said, "Call me Miles." Call me Miles. So that was it. And he asked me, if you need some more stuff, come call me again. So I called him, and I had to finish this, and then I pass it on because it was long. I had a Saab, 1983 bronze Saab. Okay, he had Ferraris, and I got a bronze Saab. So he says, "You give me a ride downtown to my girl's house." I said, "Where is it at?" He said, "It's down by the river, down by Hudson Street or something." I said, "Okay." So I go outside. We were on 79th, and my car was parked down on Fifth Avenue. He walks up to my car, and he says, looks at my car and says, "What kind of piece of shit is this?" I look at him and I said, "It's the piece of shit's gonna take you downtown. Shut your fucking mouth." So he said, "All right, Quincy." So he gets in the car, and I drive him downtown. And I let him out, and he says to me, "Okay, thanks, man. he said, here's all my phone numbers. All my phone numbers in California, everybody. He said, don't give them to nobody. So I take the numbers, look at it, I said, oh, okay, man. I said, what you think I want to do? Walk down Fifth Avenue and say, yo, anybody want Miles' telephone number? This is Miles Davis's phone number. You give me $5, I'll give it to you. He looked at me like, he walked inside. And so I called him up the next day, or 2 days later, and he said, come back down. And we went down, we did the same thing. We spent another like 13 hours, and I knew something was happening. I knew something. I couldn't figure out what it was until Simon & Schuster, my agent called me and said, Simon & Schuster called me and said, is this Quincy Troupe? And I said, yeah. He says, Miles Davis just gave you first rights of refusal to write his life story. Wow. So by that time, the piece that came out of spin, it was a 2-part piece, big piece. And I said, I didn't know, I thought they was joking. So I said, are you joking? He said, no. I said, well, if you ain't joking, motherfucker, call my agent. He said, oh, what's her name? So I said, okay, here's the number. So I thought he was joking with me, so I was going to be being rude and everything else. Plus, Miles's bad manners had rubbed off on me. Had rubbed off on me. But it's the St. Louis thing anyway, in a lot of ways. And so my agent called me and said, did you just curse out Bob Bender? I said, was he serious? He said, yeah. Why don't you call him back? So I said, okay, I called him back. I said, I'm sorry, that was it. So we signed that contract, and that's how the book came. So that covers a lot.
How did you all meet? Just in the process of you making the documentary, or over the years?
We had met before.
Yeah, we met before. I knew his sister.
You and my dad.
His dad was great.
Yeah.
His dad was really
My
great.
dad was a real character.
I used to see him in La Jolla, walking down the street in La Jolla. Hey, you're Quincy Troupe. I'm so-and-so.
Okay, let's open it up for some questions. We have a little bit of time, so if you have a question, raise your hand for either Quincy or Stanley. There's a question right back by the column, David. Steve? Yeah, there you go.
Can you talk about Miles' relationship to painting? And
To what?
To painting.
Painting. Oh, he painted all the time when I'd go over there. I used to go over there all the time and just look at him paint. He'd go over there and he said, I'm painting today. I said, okay. So we'd eat and he'd paint, and that's be it. And what you had to learn to do with Miles Davis, you had to learn that some days he would talk and sometimes he wouldn't. And I didn't mind that so much because I'm a little bit like that too. So it's like he wouldn't talk and I'd go to school. And we sit there and just eat and have lunch, and he played music, or he played something, asked me what I thought of that, and I'd say I don't like it, and or I did like it, or whatever. And I think what he liked, I liked his painting. I thought he was some of his paintings, but he thought he was a great painter. My wife used to have an art gallery, and she told him, "Oh, wow, this is just rudimentary stuff. This is rudimentary. What you're doing." Because she knew all these great painters. What I mean. So.
Did he ever talk about music and painting in relationship?
Yeah, he talked about music and painting in relationship, yeah. Yeah, he talked about that. Same thing happens with poetry and music. It's the same kind of relationship.
I just want to, thank you so much for this amazing work. I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you.
I feel like family to you, Stanley, because I knew your father so well. I used to work for him on 57th Street. We lived in the same building. So I used to always ask him, how's your son doing? He said, oh, he's doing fine. He's doing this work or that work. But I wanted to know, how did the two of you get, the work is just amazing. I enjoyed it so much. And I think this is Harold. He was here last night. And he told me about it. And I came. And so we'll be telling a lot of people about this wonderful film. But how did the two of you come together to make this happen?
As I said, we started talking at a party. I think it was at my sister's house.
Yeah.
We started talking at a party, and I found out that Quincy had these tapes, and we managed to get them. And that's how we started.
Was it difficult to coordinate? How long did it take?
The film took about 2.5 years. We were in the edit room for a long time. I think that's one of the things that makes this film, and that's one thing I've learned from making documentary films for a long time, is that as much time as we can spend in the edit room, we do. We try to be really productive in the edit room, but there's nothing like the time to make it kind of sane. So we were able to pretty much do what we wanted with this film. We used all the music that we wanted. We had an agreement with Sony, and we had an agreement with Miles' family, and we're still trying to figure out how to pay for it. So there'll be a hat outside. But so I mean, we could use pretty much whatever we wanted, and figured out how to pay for it.
Thank you.
Hi, Stanley. It's Nicole. I have a question for you about Frances. I found her so intriguing, and you know there's a saying, behind every great man there's a great woman, and I think your documentary epitomizes that with all the great women that you feature in there. I wanted to know, at one point in the process of creating this documentary, did you interview her, because you gave her so much space, and I think she's kind of like this cohesive glue that kind of, you get a real sense of who he is, and I just wanted to understand, like, how did her interview impact your filmmaking?
Great question. So we interviewed Frances about 2 years ago, I guess. I should say that unfortunately Frances passed away right after Thanksgiving of this year, and unfortunately she never got to see the film. And we all imagine what it would be like to be sitting here doing Q&As with Frances. I can't even imagine. I mean, Frances was just a character. She's just hilarious. And I think one of the great decisions that we made was, originally we had her in the film, and we had her divided up, throughout the film. And at one point I said, well, what would happen if we just kind of took Frances and just made a Frances section? And just let Frances go, like just take the reins off Frances and let her be her. And that's what we did, I remember we were going out to interview Frances. I talked to Greg Tate, who's in the film, and he said, "Oh, you'll love Frances. Frances got jokes." And Frances was, I mean, you couldn't tell if she was pulling your leg or not. It's like, but I've seen the film over and over again. Frances did just what she was doing at all.
Actually, I have a question for Quincy. Was the book, I haven't read it, was the book based primarily on the conversations you had with Miles, or did you also go out and talk to colleagues and family and friends and bandmates?
No, I talked to everybody. I talked to everybody that was in Miles' band, Frances, everybody, Cecily, everybody. And then when I decided to do, and then I had to decide how I was going to write this book. So I decided to write it in Miles's voice, to transpose everybody's, whatever they said, into Miles. In other words, like, the book would have, it would say, like, he went down to the corner to buy a drink. It said, I went down to the corner, first person. So I put everybody, including everything I did, and said, everybody, what Cecily and everybody else said, Frances, I put it in his voice, and to talk, and all the way through the book. So I defy anybody who reads that book to see any of me in that book, because I put it in his voice, because I wanted him to speak. I wanted him speaking directly to you across the table. And you read that book, it's like him talking right directly to you. And so I decided to do that. So a lot of people got mad because they thought they got left out. But I used their words and put it in his voice. And when he talked about them, his way.
We have a question right here.
Yes, good evening, and thank you both for such a wonderful picture. Movie documentation of Miles Davis. I am 74, never heard his music, never knew I was listening to his music, because I'm not a jazz person per se, but I love his music. I am so in love with what I saw here this evening that I want to get all of his music down.
That's a lot of music.
Yes, but I'm looking forward to doing just that and reading your book. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a real testament to your film and how it's for novices and people who are brand new to Miles, and also people who love him and know his work really, really well. I think we have we have time for maybe one more question. Otis, maybe right in the middle there. We will definitely continue the conversation outside in the lobby, so please, these two gentlemen, will meet you in the lobby and we can continue then. We have another mic that we can pass over.
Okay, great. First of all, congratulations with it, and especially, I mean, it was amazing. Thank you. But I wondered, where is Cecily Tyson? Where is that
She's
goddess?
probably on like 79th Street.
What happened?
Cecily didn't want to be interviewed. Because Cecily is writing her own book and didn't, that's what she said, didn't want to be included. We did everything we possibly could to include Cecily, from talking to Cecily directly, talking to her lawyer, talking to her best friend, talking to her dog, talking to her doorman, talking to anybody, we could. So, I mean, I feel very comfortable, and then we did everything we could to get Cecily, in the film. And that happens, often in filmmaking. People are, for whatever reason, you just can't get them. So, but she's there. I think she's there, and it's really obvious what she did for Miles, bringing him out of that hiatus, and so she's there.
Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank you all.
This book is on sale at our concession stand, so
Incredible book.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And let's hang out in the lobby. If y'all could move into the lobby, that'd be great. We have another
And
screen.
please let people know we're here for another 2 weeks at least, all day, every day. Please let people know that you are our only and best advertiser. Thank you all so much for coming.